What is a telltale sign that someone is a really selfish person? Story 1. My former neighbors are bad alcoholics. Every night is a Friday night. Weekends are like New Year's. The police were constantly getting called to their house, and their kids not only destroyed their property, but other people's as well. Their junk was always strewn all over multiple yards. Their landlord evicted them. My neighbor was pissed and fought hard in court to stay because they paid their rent via assistance. It was everyone else's fault but theirs. It was the landlord's fault for being biased against them, the neighbor's fault for complaining about their kids, their parents' fault for not helping more. Everyone bears the blame but them. All I can say is, it's been so peaceful since they've been gone. Story 2. I once had a friend who would just complain all the time about everything, never really doing anything to fix the problem. And if she did, she'd still complain about it. One day I tell her that I want to be her friend, but our conversations were always so negative, and couldn't we talk about more positive things? The whole dynamic of the friendship changed, and she just straight up stopped talking to me, saying, "I don't know what to talk about with you anymore." That admission, tied with her inaction, blew me away. We drifted apart and are no longer friends. Story 3. One of my neighbors had 2 teenage daughters. If he needed to drive them anywhere in the family shared car, he'd get into the driver's seat, adjust his seat and mirrors and seatbelt, and then would unlock the doors to allow his daughters to get into the vehicle. One time I watched him do this in the rain. I've heard the wife say that when the kids were young and crying and needed help eating, he'd have to finish his meal first before helping feed the kids, even though they ate dinner as a family, so the kids were right there next to him in a high chair. He seems like a nice person in the sense that he doesn't yell, doesn't have a temper, and isn't prone to causing arguments or anything, but he just passively seems to not consider his family before himself. Yeah, that sounds incredibly frustrating to witness. In my opinion, it seems like this neighbor has some deeply ingrained selfish habits that he's either unaware of or doesn't feel the need to change. It's great that he doesn't have a short fuse or something, but the lack of empathy and consideration for his family is really disheartening. It makes me wonder if it's just a matter of poor communication or if he's really that oblivious. Story 4. If they always have to one-up you, no matter the context. You can just casually mention that you're feeling tired because you haven't been getting enough sleep lately, and they'll jump in to remind you that they sleep 3 hours a week and work triple shifts across 4 retirement homes every day, and are also implementing political policies on foreign affairs. And while that may be an exaggeration, some people really are superheroes. However, you're allowed to feel a certain way without being made to feel smaller. Story 5. When you spend time with that person and they only talk about themselves. They don't ask about your life at all because they frankly don't care. Main character syndrome at its finest. They don't take your feelings into account when making decisions, and they only want to spend time with you so that they're not alone. Oh man, I've definitely come across some people like that before. It's so frustrating and draining when someone only talks about themselves and never bothers to ask you about your life or take your feelings into account. It's like they're using you as a sounding board instead of genuinely valuing you as a friend or person. The main character syndrome is strong with these people, and it's really disappointing when you realize that they just want to be around you to avoid being alone. Story 6. From my experience, this is basically what all selfish people have in common. When somebody tells them of a life problem, the person immediately makes it about himself. When considering helping someone, the person will always think about how it will ultimately affect them, and if they are ever inconvenienced for just a tiny bit, they won't help someone. They are willing to commit crimes in order to get what they want, no matter what kind of harm it does to others. They will always justify harmful behavior as acts of virtue, and they will always be entitled when they claim victimhood. In their eyes, they are morally superior to others, and they will demonize those who do not agree with them. These people are hateful no matter how much they preach about love and kindness. The bottom line is they only want themselves to benefit while everyone else has to give way to them. The person is never open to discussion and is willing to censor those who have different opinions from them. Only their opinions matter, and they consider their opinions as the only correct ones. Story 7. I have a friend who socially is nice and fun to be around. Everyone seems to like him. But then he goes and just steals stuff from me randomly and plays it off as a joke afterward. He took my charger and pretending he didn't know where it was for way too long, or stealing my gum and then playing it off as a joke when it was in his bag. It's very annoying and comes off as quite selfish. Ew, that sounds super annoying. I can understand why it would be frustrating to have a friend who's generally fun to be around, but then pulls stunts like stealing your stuff and playing it off as a joke. It's definitely a selfish behavior and can leave you feeling disrespected and unappreciated. Story 8. When everything they do is for themselves. They can seem kind and thoughtful, but you learn it was only for their benefit. They can be cruel and heartless, also for their benefit. They feel completely indifferent to all of it because they don't actually care either way if they've made you happy or sad. They only care about what they get out of it. Story 9. They do not own their mistakes. Ask yourself, when was the last time the person admitted to making a mistake and truly apologized? 1. They only have friends or relationships who can benefit them. 2. If you point out a mistake they made, they become defensive or blame it on you. 3. They have no empathy for those who are hurting or suffering. 4. They do not give to a charity in secret. If they do give, they make it a point to get public recognition. 5. They are jealous of another's success. 6. They are materialistic. They are envious of what others have. Story 10. My uncle has 4 kids. Only one talks to him. My Uncle Clyde is absolute garbage. His son, also garbage, that talks to him is Rubio. Rubio is a trucker. Clyde, who lives with Rubio, is home alone most of the time. Clyde and Rubio are disgusting in every way possible. They don't bathe as they should, their clothes all have stains, and they just don't generally take care of themselves. They have multiple dogs in the house and piss and shit everywhere on top of their own man-made messes. The house should be condemned. Clyde was recovering from surgery and stayed with my dad. Clyde told Dad the house smelled so bad that he couldn't sleep, so Dad agreed to let Clyde stay and recover. Clyde brought one dog, and without telling anyone, bought a puppy to live with him while at my dad's house. Clyde would leave, and the puppy would fuss because of separation anxiety. I worked from my dad's house, and I couldn't work with this puppy going off. As you can guess, the dogs behaved the same as they did at home. The puppy chewed everything, and Clyde didn't try to stop it. The puppy chewed my dad's hunting boots, and Clyde said he hadn't seen Dad wear them in a while, so he thought that was okay. Clyde was treating my dad's house with a total lack of respect, and it took Dad a while to kick him out. Dad kept giving him move-out dates, but there was always an excuse. Clyde stole money from my dad, and my dad was paying Clyde to do some work around the house. Clyde used my dad's debit card to pay his personal expenses, although he is able to work, but just doesn't want to. Well, that sounds like an absolute nightmare of a situation. It's really unfortunate when family members like your Uncle Clyde and Rubio behave so disrespectfully and carelessly, both in their personal lives and towards others. The poor hygiene and lack of consideration for your dad's house is just appalling. I can't believe Clyde would bring a puppy without even discussing it with your dad first, and then allow it to cause so much destruction. That's obviously incredibly selfish and inconsiderate. Story 11. Every little expense they have is nickel and dime to the maximum degree, even to the point of favoring themselves more than others. But when someone else spends money, it's the opposite. They'll push back on paying, or do whatever they can to shift their level of responsibility down for the cost. For example, they'll hand you a $10 bill for a shared meal when it's on your credit card, in their head quickly thinking, my meal was $12, that's close enough. Conveniently rounding that $2 down and forgetting about the drink they got, the appetizer that they shared, and not including tax and tip. But when they are paying and asking for money, you can be sure you'll pay every dollar you owe, and often more. That'll be the time they got the most expensive meal and 5 rounds of drinks, and decides it will just be easier if we split the bill equally. Story 12. I worked at a restaurant when I was 18, and there was a bridge nearby where trains ran, underpassing through the town, of course. One day, a homeless man had enough of life and decided he wanted to jump. The police barricaded the entryway of the bridge on both sides so they could talk him out of it. The co-owner of the restaurant joked with a customer that he wished he had a megaphone so he could yell, "Just jump! You're ruining my business right now!" And he laughed. The customer laughed. I quit. Money was more important to these people than that man's life. To me, that is what selfishness is. Story 13. They're happy to take gifts from you for a couple of birthdays or holidays, but haven't even asked you when your birthday is, let alone reciprocated. It's not fair or reasonable to always expect reciprocation, but when they don't care enough to even ask you when your birthday is or what you would like for Christmas when they've had a few chances to, then that's just selfish. Story 14. I was a very selfish person. It took a lot of issues to come up for me to learn to be a better friend. The signs I caught for myself were, and still are, asking me not to do something, but then I don't anyways because it was better for me even if I was in their home. Me getting angry when they rightfully got upset. Me getting upset when my friends wanted a turn doing the thing we were doing together. Me getting impatient when they want to talk or tell me anything. Me getting upset when I had to share anything that I didn't want to, even if it was a harmless item or something I wasn't even messing with prior or even forgot about until that moment. The one thing I think is the worst I've done is cutting off people who were there for me for everything. But then the one time I got upset because they took a hard no to my stupid actions, and I never looked back. I am not that person anymore, at least mostly. I still have tendencies that I try to watch for or stop, but it happens occasionally. Just always try to be or do better. Well, it's really brave of you to open up and share your journey of self-improvement like this. Recognizing and admitting your past selfish behaviors is a huge step in becoming a better friend and person. It's quite relatable as many people have gone through a similar process of self-discovery and growth. Good job! Andy Fam is proud of you. Story 15. Often, friends will buy each other drinks, coffee, snacks, whatever. The unspoken understanding is, I got you this time, you can get me next time, ad infinitum. There's not really an expectation of, you owe me $10 for the drinks, generally. You know when someone is selfish when you happily pay for their drinks or snacks or whatever, but it's like pulling teeth to get them to get your items. When it's their turn, they're never around. When it's your turn, or when they mysteriously forget their payment items, they're mysteriously always around. It's pretty hard to spot initially, especially as friends, you don't want to think negatively of them, but you start to notice over time, and one day you think to yourself, how come they never cover me? Story 16. The first sign that I always notice is they not respecting your time. They invite you and cancel the plans. They are always late. They make plans halfway and leave them hanging in the air, such as not setting a date and time. They invite you last minute and are frustrated that you can't or won't leave the house and meet them straight away. In my experience, this is a universal trait that selfish people have and that can be spotted very early on. Other most obvious signs are there too, but this is something that you can notice almost as soon as you meet the person. Story 17. People who just generally don't use their turn signals and drive like douchebags. Tailgating tends to be another indicator. They pretend they are the most important person on the road. I asked someone why they don't use turn signals when turning or changing lanes, and they literally looked at me like I was stupid, basically saying, why would I use it if I know that I'm clear on the other lane? Signals are not for you, they are for everyone else around you, so they know what the fuck you're doing and can adjust accordingly. I see people that drive like that with busted up front ends of their car because they got in their third rear end accident. They still tailgate people. This points out another thing as well. They don't learn from their mistakes. My wife, before we met, got in a rear end accident once. That was enough for her to never tailgate someone ever again. I know people who have totaled 3 cars because they drive like jackasses, and they blamed the other driver, even though insurance declared them at fault in all 3 wrecks. Oh man, I couldn't agree more here. People who don't use their turn signals and drive recklessly are incredibly frustrating and selfish. It's baffling that they act like they're the only ones on the road and don't even bother to consider the safety of others. The fact that some people don't learn from their mistakes and continue to put others in danger is mind-boggling. Kudos to your wife for recognizing the importance of driving responsibly after her accident. Story 18. I made plans to see a movie once on a date. I also owed her some money for going in half and half on a gift she bought for someone. We went to dinner beforehand, and she said we had to go to her favorite restaurant. I didn't care. At dinner, I gave her the money I owed her. I paid the bill for dinner. I asked if she could pay the tip. She went ballistic, called me cheap. Like, how dare you ask me to use $10 from the $200 you just gave me for the tip? Then she didn't want to go to the movie that I pre-purchased tickets for. This woman never stopped talking about money, like a real disorder. Every conversation related to something about money. Glad she's gone. Story 19. Not cleaning up or picking up after themselves in public or shared spaces, like not wiping down machines or equipment at the gym after they're done, not re-racking weights and other equipment after they're done, not returning shopping carts to the appropriate areas, sticking stuff on random shelves at the store instead of putting unwanted items back where they found them. These are 10 out of 10 selfish moves. This is someone else's problem. Story 20. Had a bad friend on and off since childhood that I'm pretty sure fell into some spectrum of a personality disorder. He was famous for saying whatever to whoever got what he wanted. Lies meant nothing to him and came naturally, a lot of which he'd deny when confronted. He would say one thing one day, then deny it the next, and try to make you look crazy for distorting his reality. The deal breaker came when he was confronted in a group by multiple people who had enough of his bullshit. He was called out for using and taking advantage of people, taking much more than he gave. He tried turning it around, saying real friends don't keep tabs on one another, and now he can't trust us. Last I heard, he was trying unsuccessfully to be a life coach. Story 21. A huge sign that you're dealing with a selfish person. They never inconvenience themselves on your behalf. For example, every time you hang out, you're the one that visits. Every time you go out to eat is at their favorite spots. Every decision they make is based on something that is gained for themselves, and based on that logic, they will not do for you as you might do for them. The effort put into the relationship is highly unbalanced. Story 22. They can do something, and it's all right, but the same thing happens to them, and it's tremendously fed up. Not taking accountability for anything, an argument or disagreement, is because of you, and they don't see how they contributed at all. They'll talk often if it's about themselves, but they tune out or suddenly don't have the time when you want to talk about something in your world. Story 23. When they make everything about themselves or compare their situation to yours. So yeah, I was rushed to the hospital after flying through my windshield and had to have my leg amputated and my appendix removed. And I lost 1/4 liter of my blood. I twisted my ankle while playing on a climbing frame when I was 3. I have it worse than you. My dog I've had since 2nd grade died the other day. He was hit by a car, and then we found out he had hip displacer and stage 4 leukemia. I accidentally flushed my fish down the toilet when I was 3. I think I've gone through worse than you. Story 24. Gaslighting. If someone just keeps disagreeing with what you think, feel, and want, but without giving any reason, they are not interested in anyone but themselves and want you to stop caring about yourself as well. It took me way too long to realize all of my family and friends were like that, but I feel much better now that I cut them out of my life. If you can relate to this at all, please take care and don't waste any more time with these garbage people. Sorry to hear that you had to go through that experience with your family and friends. Gaslighting is such a harmful and manipulative behavior, and it's disheartening to know that people you trusted were treating you that way. It takes a lot of courage to cut those people out of your life and prioritize your own well-being. I'm glad you're feeling better now, and I hope your story can serve as a reminder for others who might be in similar situations to take care of themselves and not to tolerate this kind of behavior. Wishing you all the best moving forward. Story 25. When they snitch over petty that really doesn't affect them in any way at all, but hurts others. For example, like last night, when someone snitched on us breaking down part of our deli early, because we're horribly understaffed on the busiest night of the week, and day shift barely did their signing off duties. I was livid at the man because I told him straight up why I was doing it, and instead of being a kind, considerate person that would allow us to spend time at home and with our families, he snitched to get his sandwich that he damn well could have easily made at home, but he got to power trip. Anyways, bit of a rant, but I hate snitches, especially when the deed in question harms 0 people. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.